Okay, so we know we've got our PHP file connected. The next thing we want to look at is how do we get the information from our form into our PHP file. So we'll remove the echo statement, we don't need that. And we're going to start off with an if statement. So we're going to say if is set, and what we want to know is the button pressed. So we've got is set, we need to open some brackets for that, and we simply want to know if our button got pressed. So we need to put some square brackets there, and then it was submit btn. It's the name I gave the button. So we're going to check if that's been hit. Just confirm that. So yeah, submit button was the name I gave it. Now my other names are forename, surname, email and password one. I'm going to need those in a minute. If the button wasn't pressed, that means we've got here in a different way. Either someone's been hacking in and typed in the URL direct, or something else has gone astray. So we're not going to do anything with them, we're not going to allow them to do anything, so we're just going to return them to that file, which was index.html. So we do that by having the location, or using this in PHP. So we put the location, and we need to get back to index.html, and we can also return with it an error which is no submit. I'll leave it all lowercase. Okay, so we've got an error message return. So if our button's been pressed, we will start the processing. If it hasn't, we're going to return. And what do we need to process? Well, we need to get all of our data, and we're going to do what we did before. So in the previous one, so f name, we're going to use post to get all of these in. So if you remember, it was forename, and we're going to copy this and copy it again and copy it again, and we've got S name, we've got email, and we've got PWD, and coming into those we've got, make sure I spell these right, surname, we've got email, and we've got password 1. Now I should really get password 2 in as well, but for the purposes of this example, I'm only going to get password 1 in, because I'm not going to do any error checking. So normally this would be followed on with some error checking in the PHP to make sure everything was correct, but I'm not going to do that. I've got my JavaScript error checking as well already in place, but we should really do some PHP error checking. So at this point we've got our link to our form. Okay, so we've now got all the information we need from our form into our PHP script. The other thing we need to do is to now connect to our database, and what I'm going to do is to create another PHP file to do that, and I'm going to call it dbconnect .php. And the reason I'm doing this is there might be a number of reasons why we connect to our database in our website, and it's useful to have a separate file which has these connections in. It's also a little bit more secure in one sense, but that's besides the point. So let's just go through this. So, and then again I need to say PHP script, and don't need any space. There we go. So there's a number of things I need to set up. So server name is one of them. Whoa, not sure what's happened there. Server name. I'll just list out the things I need. I need the database username. I need the database password. And I need the database name. Okay, so, whoa, don't want that to happen. Database name. Okay, so I then, once I've got all of those things, I need to set up another variable, which is the connection variable. I'll just call it con, which is almost the accepted variable for this. And I'm going to use some MySQLi commands which are available in PHP, and I'm going to connect to the database, and I need to pass to it all of these things. So I need the server name, I need the database user. Can't remember which order put these in. Database username. Then we need the password, and finally the name. Okay, so if I've got all of those things, I can then make my connection. Now, one of the reasons we have this in a separate file, as I said, we're probably going to connect at different points in our website. So here we're writing information, in another page we might be retrieving information, so we'd have the connection set up. I'll just put a little bit of protection in here, so if we don't get a connection, so if I haven't got a connection, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to kill the whole thing, because without a connection nothing's going to work. So I can just do that. I'll put a message, and I can pick up the MySQLi connect error. Okay, let me just, right, so I'm going to try and get a connection by passing those things. If I don't get a connection, I'm going to just kill everything. Right, so I need to go back up here for a second. So the server name, we are using a local host, so it is actually called localhost. Now these will change, these will vary a little bit. So if you are hosting on a web server, these values are obviously going to change, and that's another reason to put them in a separate file, so we can just change them in one place. The database username, we're going to stick with the default for our local one, which is root. you can actually have multiple users for a database, and that's something you can look at to secure things. In terms of the actual password, the default password in XAMPP is no password at all. Again, on a server you would actually set up a password, and then finally the database username. Ours, if you remember, was form test. So we've just check I've spelled that right. Yeah, so it was form test, it was ours. Okay, so that will get our connection. So I'll save that. In terms of our form process, we need to say that we require that file. So we'll say require and db connect .php. So we've got to a stage now where we've got our data from our form into our PHP script. We've got our connection to our database sorted. So the next thing to do will be to actually write the information. So I'll save that. Okay, so the next bit is to add in our information or move our information from our PHP to our database. So we need to do that in a number of stages. The first thing we need to do is to set up the SQL. So we first of all need a variable to hold our SQL statement. Now we have to be careful with this. So our PHP is set up, so we need a semicolon at the end of our PHP. We need then to put in our SQL statement, and we're going to insert into, and we called our table member, so that's what we need, member. Then we need some brackets, and we're going to put in there what fields we're going to use. And then we have to say what values we're going to put in, and again those go in brackets, and then we need a semicolon to end our SQL statement. So it's useful to write it out like that so we can remember what we need to do. Now if I move that across a little way, I can see now the names I need to use. So these are the names I need to use. So I've got MF name, MS name, email, and MPWD. So MF name, comma, MS name, comma, email, comma, MPWD. Remember, I don't need to create the member ID. That's going to be done automatically for me by the database system. So I just need to pass the other things in. Now, I could just put in here all the variables, F name, etc. from, if I spell it correctly, I could just put these in here. However, if I was to do that, and I'll obviously put the others in as well, surname, email, password. If I was to do that, that would be fine. But what could happen is that because I've got one long SQL statement, if somebody knew what they were doing, they could actually put some code into the forename field in my form, and it would get transferred across into here, and then it would go into here. Now I can do certain things, so I can validate and remove all spurious characters, so that would help, but just to be double sure, we're going to use something called prepared statements. Now what we do there is we say, right, this is my SQL, and I'm going to put 4 values in, but I need to do a few more stages first. So I'm going to create a statement, and my statement is going to be initialized. So MSQLI statement initialize, and we're going to just check we've got our connection. We are then going to prepare our statement. This is why they're called prepared statements. So it's MySQLi statement and prepare, and we're now linking our statement, which is our connection effectively, with our SQL code. But we can do something a little bit better at this point. We can actually check if that's happened. So we can have an if statement and say if that has been successful, or more to the point, if it's not been successful, so I'll put a not in there, then we're going to duck out of this. So we're going to use our header, we're going to use our location, and we're going to send back to our index.html with an error, and our error is going to be SQL fail. So we've got there, and I've been missing them off again, my semicolons. So I've got my SQL fail there. So if we fail to prepare the statement, so if we haven't linked it all up properly, then there's a problem with our database, then we're going to drop out. In fact, I will put an exit in there as well to drop out completely. But if it was a success, I can carry on. So I'm going to now bind my data to my statement. Okay, so this is a bit awkward to remember. I think I've got that right. MySQLi statement bind parameters, and I need to say what statement it's connected with, and what sort of parameters have I got. Well, I've got all strings, so I've got 4 strings I need to bind in, and now I'm going to put in my actual variables. So I've got forename, sname, email, and password. And then I'm going to, so I should have everything going in. So now I'm going to execute that command. So my SQLi statement execute. And which one do I want to execute? Well, it's the statement, the MT. And we'll just return a success after that. So I need to get back to my index.html. That's all I've got to go back to at the moment. But we'll return success. Okay, so that should hopefully work. I think I've got everything correct in there. So let's go to our form. Let's go back to our form. Let's refresh our form. That should refresh everything else. So I'll type in Mike, my surname, mike@mail.com, password, capital ABC 1DEF, capital ABC 1DEF, and click submit. Okay, so it's gone away and it's come back and said it's a success. If I go to my database and actually browse my database, you can see that that data has been written in to my database. However, we do have a problem. The password has been written in text which we can actually read. So how are we going to overcome this problem that the password can be read? It's gone into our database like that. Well, if we go back to our code, then we can see that we're just putting our password in there. What we need to do is actually hash the password, and we're lucky that PHP provides the facility to do that quite easily. So we can do hash pwd, so a new variable, and make that equal to password hash, which is a nice function that's been provided. And we need to then say which thing we need to hash. So it's our password, and we want to use password default. Oh, spot it wrong. Wait a minute. There we go. Password default. Semicolon at the end. So we've hashed our password. So now we can actually type in hash pwd, and that's what we're going to write into our database. So it was easy as that to actually hash that password. Now, just a quick note about that while I save it. Because we've hashed the password, we also need to use functions when we read it back and we compare, but we're not going to do that today. We can look at that another time. So if I just quickly, so that's our database as it stands. If I just quickly go to our web form, and we'll refresh our web form. Let me just go back and refresh. Okay, so I'll type in some more data now. So I'll say Fred blogs. We'll have Fred at mail.com. We'll use the same password. So it was a capital ABC 1DEF, capital ABC 1DEF. So I've used the same password as before. Click on submit. My JavaScript is okay with that. My form has come back and said it's been successful. I'll go to my database, and if I just refresh that, takes a while, you can see that we've got our second line of data. So my first line, which I put in before, Mike Hollis, and I've got ABC1DEF, and remember I used the same password, but now it's been hashed, and I've got this long string of characters which I couldn't guess in a month of Sundays exactly what the password was. So there we go, we've got a hashed password into our database, and that's an extra form of protection. Okay, so we've done a fair bit in this session. We've actually written to our database, we've used prepared statements which protects from SQL injection, and we've hashed our password. Okay, so I'm going to finish off there.